I'm going to actually today start off with the Lord's Prayer and get right to business. So, Our Father in heaven, honored be thy name. May thy kingdom come. May thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us each day our daily bread and forgive us of our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass us. Give us and lead us on a righteous path and guard us from evil. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right. All right. So just to get right to business, I'm going to basically be debunking the out of Africa idea. We're going to be using real science, and obviously, it's going to be deep. Now, first thing first is that I'm going to be reviewing a video, and this is the video, and it has to do with the out of Africa idea. And when people don't use fossils, it just drives me crazy when people assume a thing and don't use fossils at all. So we're going to be reviewing this video using multiple information.
Ramses III, the second king of the 20th dynasty of Egypt, and Nelson Mandela, the president of South Africa, are known to belong to the Y-DNA haplogroup E1B1A. This episode covers the origins of haplogroup E, its branches, and their migration routes. About 100,000 years ago, the Y-DNA haplogroup CT called the Eurasian Adam or Adam of out of Africa appeared for the first time in Eastern Africa. All people in this group have the M168 SMP mutant form and P9, 1NM294 on the Y chromosome. The M168 mutation is believed to have first appeared in a male from a region spanning Ethiopia and Sudan, except for those belonging to haplogroups A and B, which are not descendants of CT. 9. 1NM time in Eastern Africa. All people in this group have the M168 SMP mutant form and P9.
All right, so let me first make this, let's first get this understood. I keep saying this about CT. Now, it's already known, just like how he said, A and B didn't come from CT. But what's interesting about CT, let me actually put something here. Out of your Asia atom. CT is actually called your out of Eurasia atom. That's what CT is called. Put that right there. CT. Just put it like that. CT. So you can find it if you look on CT, and you'll find different information. There's a lot of information for it. Here, I'll just show it right here on CT. So right here, you'll see right here, the most recent common male line ancestor of all CT males today. They say, watch what it says here. Probably, this is the problem with theories. There's a difference between theories and fossils. Fossils is here it is. This is what we found, and this is the results. Probably and theories don't have actual support for them besides ideas, right? Watch what it says. Watch what it says here. Probably predated the recent African origin of modern humans. Now, what's interesting about that, if you look at the deep information that's actually displayed for CT, because there's a lot of CT finds, that CT actually shows that it was outside of Africa. But it'll go on and say a migration in which, because this is what a lot of people use. They use Wikipedia and then they try to make a little video, a little creation. I can make animations all day, but rather it's better if I show the sources, right? I can make animations all day, right? A migration in which some of his descendants obviously participated. He is therefore thought. Watch what it says, right? Probably, thought. What are these scientific terms? Are these actual terms that are backed up by actual provable, observable science, right? No, there's no fossil that is of CT in Africa, and that's what we're going to look at. The probably, and watch what it says here. Thought to have lived in Africa before this proposed migration, right? Because that's why they call CT, in keeping with the concept of Y-chromosome Adam, right? They'll say this about CT, right? CT, right, has therefore been referred to, right, in accounts obviously being popularized and everything, as being the lineage of Watch what it says here. Eurasian Adam. And guess what comes from CT? DE comes from CT. We'll talk about that in a couple different things. DE comes from CT as CF comes from CT. But everyone likes to take that E lineage and just stick it in Africa with no fossil. No fossil at all because you got a large portion of them there. Does that mean that the only portion of them is in Africa? Absolutely not. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. But let's go about it. Let's go about it today because I got some stuff I want to talk about. All right. Let me close that. And let me go up to something because I want to make sure this is what I want to go to. Yep. All right, so we're gonna be talking about some interesting things real fast. But first, let's proceed with this little video. And notice when there's certain individuals, this is an individual that I'm keeping an eye on, certain individuals like this person and other people, because doing animations is one thing, but when you're touching on human origins, I want to see people actually bring up the sources for these things. But notice he does not actually use fossils because you're not going to see the years of these things here.
NM294 on the Y chromosome. The M168 mutation is believed to have first appeared in a male from a region spanning Ethiopia and Sudan, except for those belonging to haplogroups A and B, which are not descendants of CT. All males of modern humans carry the mutation derived from M168. Haplogroups A and B remain in Africa, and among the descendants of CT, CF becomes the protagonist of Out of Africa. Today, most of the population across Eurasia are descendants of CF.
All right, let me read something real fast. Let me actually read something real fast from one of these Evernotes, the one at the bottom. So I'm gonna try to like fly do this because I actually got something to do tomorrow on something. But I just saw this. I want to talk about it because he's going to do a video on E1B1B, and I guarantee you a lot of that E1B1B is going to be in Arabia and in Europe because E1B1B, the actual fossils, are in Arabia and Europe, and obviously in Africa. But a lot of times when people touch B1A, they think it didn't move with E1B1B or with other lineages. They just counted that isolated lineage that just settled in Africa, which is completely false. But let me read something to you from here. Let me read something to you from here. And then also going to point out movements of CT. All right, so this is going to be a study that brought out the actual fossils of pretty much a found early root. But this is going to be the paper from Saudi Arabia, Y-chromosome diversities and its relationship with nearby regions, right? Just giving a little understanding for that. I'm just going to see if I can just show here it is right there from 2019 or 2009. You can see right here. But the reason why it's important because the fossil, because what you'll notice is that he'll use a method that is from the year 2000. That's what he's going to use, a method from the year 2000. But let me close this and kind of read something here just to highlight. All right, watch what it says here. All right. In fact, I'll copy this and find it right on this thing. So it's saying that I'm reading it right from this thing, right from the PDF. I'm going to open it up and I'm going to read it right from the PDF. And if any questions, let me know. Or if you seen these things, these are things that, happen a lot. My bad, I accidentally pressed C to copy. Let me just find this on here. All right. All right, so let's read what it says right here from this paper. This is what they actually say about some of the fossils that were found. All right. The presence of two underived EM96, which that's the earliest E. That's your earliest E, EM96. Saudi, right? Saudi Arabia, right? We're talking, we're talking outside of Africa when we're talking about these fossils. They're found outside of Africa. I'm gonna show you what real geneticists say. I got a video of someone that works on genetics, and we show you that the out of Africa idea is just ridiculous. But Saudi Arabia, so right here, just to make it clear, right? So Saudi Arabia, we're looking at Saudi Arabia for this information. Let's look at it a little more. So E-M96 Saudi lineages rise the interesting question related to obviously understanding when it's talk about the root of the E lineage, which is D, right? Raise some questions for it. Now this was really interesting when talk about these three lineages. I'm just going to jump down a little bit, right? We already know that it's found in Saudi Arabia and everything. It talks about successful colonizations in Asia, right? Just going to jump down here. Y-DNA founder, right? Just going to talk about the haplogroup. D is CDET. That's basically just CT. It's just C and T. It's just CT because the M168. That's CT M168. So it just talks about CT. Obviously, CT was with the L3, so that's letting you know that L was linked with L3. L and CT, the early roots of this find, they were connected. So you can see right here, and mtDNA L3 representatives. You see the regions near. You can see right here, near but external to Northeast Africa, like the Levant or Southern Arabian Peninsula, could have served, watch what it says here, could have served as the incubator for the early diversifications of non-African, obviously uniparental haplogroup variants like Y chromosome DE YAP. Now look what it's saying about DE YAP. That's saying DE YAP actually was important. Let's keep on going. And CFP143, and obviously the M and N ancestors. It says these would have spread globally and diversified over time and space. Now, watch what it says about this model. This model would imply that both CFP143 and the DE YAP insertion, obviously the DE YAP lineages, evolved nearby but outside Africa. So it's letting you know they evolved nearby but outside Africa. How do we know that? Let's just see what he says about D real fast.
Please refer to their migration path by clicking the migration path chromosome Adam, linked at the top right. Haplogroup DE, the brother of CF, also formed 73,000 years ago in Eastern Africa. In this episode, I want to introduce haplogroup E, a descendant of DE. Haplogroup E is mainly observed with high frequency in Africa. It is not uncommonly observed in the Middle East and Europe. Before explaining haplogroup E, let me briefly introduce haplogroup DE. The markers of mutations that define DE are M1YAP, M145, and M203. It is considered an unusual haplogroup of DE. This is because they are geographically dispersed in different regions to form clusters. Haplogroup D started about 75,000 years ago, as well as CF. It is currently concentrated.
All right, so let's take a look. So it says that DE formed about 75,000 years ago. Let's take a quick dive into some of the historicity of DE and some of the things of the D groups and whatnot, and some of the ties of other lineages. So we don't really have any evidence for it being that old. Obviously, there's no evidence for it being that old. Some of the oldest finds of DE or D lineages are about 60,000. I don't know where he's getting that 70. Obviously, he's using some information that's either outdated or not even supported. So it's very important to understand. But when using the fossils, obviously this part I'll just skip ahead because he already knows D. When he says that it's found in Africa, there's no found D in Africa. All Ds found in Africa are modern Ds. There's no fossil of D in Africa. They're all modern.
Concentrated in northern Africa.
But watch what it says here when he talks about D. All D is going to be outside Africa.
The Himalayas and Japan. There are two theories about the origin of DE: African origins and Asian origins. Mutations occur when a single strand of DNA ALU copies itself and inserts it into the Y chromosome. The region where YAP, or Y-chromosomal polymorphism, is inserted into the DNA determines the region where it is formed. If you want to know more about ALU, please refer to the expert's explanation linked in the upper right corner. The Y chromosome insertion of the YAP marker was first discovered in 1997 by Michael Hammer's research team at the University of Arizona. According to his claim, Yap was inserted from Asia about 55,000 years ago into the Y chromosome of modern humans, who migrated from Africa to Asia. However, since 2000,
All right, so notice what he says. So since not 2020, since 2000, from the year 2000. But if we look at more recent papers, we're going to start noticing some different thing happen. But he goes and used the later idea.
many scientists have reevaluated the YP's Asian insertion theory and started to propose the African origin theory. Peter Underhill and Tumas Kivisold argue that the 2007 African Ape theory is more plausible. A 2008 paper published by Carafat's team supported the theory of African origin. It is estimated that D may have left Africa and went to Asia right after the CT group left Africa.
So that statement is very important. How he said, obviously, saying D left Africa, obviously because there's no fossils in Africa of D.
It is a revision of his hypothesis, which had previously argued for the Asian origin theory. This video was created with the African origin theory in the background.
All right, so now that's why we're looking at this. So, African origin theory. I'm just going to scroll up right here. So you can see right here, he shows D. And as soon as he shows D, he knows that D leaves, right? And starts over here, grows over here. Not over here, but over here. In a lot of these areas. All right, so let's look at some stuff. I just want to grab something look at some things real fast. All right, so we already established about CT, get a little understanding on that. So there's a couple of different information. I'm just going to slide through. Start at the top here. All right. So obviously DE is in a lot of different people. One of the people that DE is in the Anu. Here's a paper about what happened with the Anu. It says genetic testing has shown that the Anu belong mainly to Y-DNA haplogroup D, which is D1A2, and C. Y-DNA haplogroup D M55 is found throughout the Japanese, obviously the areas of Japan, whatnot. Just going to jump a little down right to what it says right here. Watch what it says here. Recently, it was confirmed that Japanese branch of haplogroup D is distinct and isolated from other D branches for more than 53 years. So that's important. That was because that was a split, right? That's D1, there's D2. There's going to be a major split that happens with these lineages. Jump down a little bit to get a little more deeper into that split. Obviously, geographic, the spreading of haplogroup D with the marked differences between Africa and Eurasia suggests that the Arctic human formed admixing with, obviously, basically ancient humans, right? Modern humans might have been, they say Neanderthal, right? So a couple of ancient things like that, right? We talked about that before, about the mixing of ancient peoples and whatnot. You can see right here in another study, similarly, haplogroups C3, D, N, O, right, specific to Central Asia, 36%, right? And just letting you know that these lineages are mainly in the areas of Asia, right? Here's something a little bit different. This one just talks a little bit about some of the Yap lineages because D, E, these are Yap lineages. This talks about a group of people with Yap insertion migrated from South Asia to Central Asia and reached the Mediterranean. They gave rise to E lineage, right? You see what's going on there? With mutation N40 and M60, right? The E lineage obviously went into Africa's the Middle East and Europe and different things like that. But this is just important to understand this back migration of people to Africa through the Levant is supported in this study. Did you see right there? Right? You can see right here. This is the study that is what it's talking about. This is a paper that came out in 2021. Right? You can see what's going on there when talking about these individuals that are around India. So let's go back. Go back real fast. All right, so you can see what's going on there. So obviously, genomic diversity in people of India, right? Gives a little information of that. Let's keep going. Right here, we can see that obviously Elamites, some information with the people with the lurs and stuff. The lurs. Tomorrow I'm going to talk about Abraham and the third dynasty, and talk about the Israelites, how the Israelites came to be and whatnot. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow. But today I'm just going to make some light work real fast. So just a little bit about the Lurs. The Lurs were a people, we talked about it with the Kassites. They came down, right, from, they were with like a group of the Gasulians. In fact, it says right here, Lurs are a mixture pretty much of Iranian tribes originating from Central Asia and whatnot a long time ago, such as the Kassites and whatnot. Obviously, and the Gasu or the Gutians, right? The Kassites and the Gutians will be a mix of those, and we already talked about that. That's mixes of Japheth, but they're mixed with many different peoples. But what's interesting about it is that obviously having a mixed haplogroup, because the Kassites and the Gutians are a mixed company, but they do have, as you can see right here, also significant is haplogroup E1B1B that we find in Iran, right? And there's a group called the Elamites and whatnot, and they know that basically the same thing, right? Also significant among the Elamites is haplogroup E1B1B, right? Originating in, they say, the Horn of Africa. But we know that in the time of Abraham, Elamites had E lineages. So we're going to look at that when we get some understandings of ancient Elamites and stuff. Because if you don't know about the third dynasty of Elamites coming to the lands of Sumer. From this area, you're going to have a group that comes to the lands of Sumer, and they're going to be settled there. And that's actually when later on when Abraham pops up. We'll talk about that tomorrow. We'll go into that. All right, so here's another one. The Yap lineage. Yap haplotype 5 may have entered Pakistan from Arabian Peninsula by means of migration across the Gulf of Oman, right? So Oman. So you can see right here. So it's saying at this area, right, it would have migrated into from this area, it would have migrated into the lands of Africa. Is what it's saying there. Let's keep on going into the information there to get a full picture on what's being said. Let me see which one was that right here. Okay. So again, you can see right here, may have entered Pakistan from Arabian Peninsula by means of migrations across the Gulf of Oman, whereas males possessing Yap, you can see it here, haplotype 4. So it's just talking E1B1A, E1B1B, haplotype 5, and haplotype 4 right here is actually E1B1A or E1B1B. E1B1A, haplotype 4, E1B1B, haplotype 5, may have traveled over land from the Middle East. These inferences are consistent, obviously, with basically ethno-historical data suggesting that Pakistan's ethnic groups have been influenced by migrations from both Africa and Levantan source populations. Now, why Levantan? Because E1B1B, you can find it in the Natufian. We'll talk about that when we get more deeper into it. The oldest E groups that go all the way up to like 40, 30,000 years before present. Haplogroup D1 and D-M174 or D2 is a subclade of haplogroup D-CT. This male haplogroup is found obviously mainly in East Asia and the Andaman Islands. So that's important. That's just a little island that's about in the midst of these areas. So that's very important to know about a little bit. Let me go over here. So it's letting you know that it's very diverse, right? Though it is also found roughly with low frequencies in Central Asia and mainland Southeast Asia. It's also found as far as Europe and the Middle East in low frequencies. You can see what's going on with D. So D does show some presence in the Middle East and some areas around. We know because D2, which they call D0, was actually in Syria. Another one of D, right? Population is a population surprisingly settled in this area. I'm gonna show you what it's talking about. Just talk about some of the D groups, where they settle. and I'll just show it all on a simple map. Let's get it. So here's where D settled. So some people don't know, D would have settled into areas. Let me go over here. Let's go a little more deep into it, right? Obviously, adapting to extreme environments, possibly befitting from gene flow from Denisovans. So it's saying that they have some connections from the north, from ancient individuals that were in the north. It's saying D has evidence of ancient individuals being in the north. That's why it's putting these things 40,000, 50,000, because that admixture for them to get that admixture, because a lot of times they would have that admixture and some would not have that admixture. Like we know that there's a lot of different people that have Neanderthal, and a lot of times that's under that F-M89 group, and some don't have Neanderthals. Like a lot of E groups don't, the E groups don't have it, but they have some Denisovan mix in them a little bit in an ancient ghost population. The younger, it just talks about these other ones and whatnot. Skip down. So these are the information. I'll put these in the description afterwards. Jarwal, right? And how you say that? Ongi shared haplogroup D lineages with each other within the last 70,000 years. So, and we know the Jarwals and ones from the Adamese Islands, this is outside of Africa. We know that because right now it's just D. Get a little bit on the D and E. So right here, you can see what I'm talking about. So they're saying that some of the D has settled in this area. All right, that's great. In fact, almost all of them are that D. All right, so it says they were there for 7,000 years. Had obviously diverged from the Japanese ones. So this, remember, we were just reading on that? We were just reading right here. Matter of fact, this is what I'm going to do. This one connects with this one up here that we were just reading right here, right? Where it was talking about just going to cut it and paste it down here just so we can have that next to each other. Right there, right? That's the one we were just talking about, where we just talked about right there, right? Japanese branch of haplogroup D is distant and isolated from other branches, right? For 53,000 years. And we can see right here, again, 53,000 years. You can see what it's saying about the Japanese one. It's saying 53,000 years ago. So it's saying they split, most likely by a split from a shared ancestral population. So it's saying they obviously, these ones were in these islands for a long time, right? For the DE to make these lineages, and these ones, the Japanese ones, said this long ago, right? You can see we had talked about this piece of information. So just talk about the Y chromosome sequences of diverse Indian populations and the ancestry of the Adamese. So you're seeing what's going on there is telling you that it goes far back. It's saying that these lineages and these D lineages, where this is all D, as you can see right here, there's D. So this is all D in that island. It's saying that the D lineages has settled obviously going over past India, and they're settling over here, right? And that's early on. These are early landings, very, very early landings that they're there. Let me make sure I close some of these while we're opening them. Got some other stuff. All right. Going down, so you can see what's going on. You can see what's going on. Obviously, the picture is more complex than that. What about E1B1A? Right? Did you know there's a fine? Let me tell you a story real fast before I show you this. When Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had their sons, right? Obviously, their sons had multiple branches. There's multiple different sons. There's multiple different people. Obviously, Abraham is a son of Terah. Terah, obviously, being a son all the way down from, if we follow it down, it's going to be Eber. Eber has obviously other relatives, right? Jotanites and whatnot, bringing them forth. Now, can they have a E1B1A? Can any of those groups have an E1B1A? It's possible. It's definitely possible. But what I want to conclude is that we know that in the biblical narrative, Judah, right, had a baby with a Canaanite. Now, if you follow this U5, right, if you follow this U5 all the way back, you can find out that you can find out that U5 was in the Phoenicians and the Canaanites, right? You can look up a Carthaginian male, right? If you can look it up, I'll just type it down real fast, or I'm not gonna type it down, but you can type it down. You can find it. It's out there. We already talked about it many times. A Carthaginian male with U5. But this is actually E1B1A. Let me actually show it. that this line right here is E1B1A, and I'm going to show it on a paper. Right. So this group right here that I'm going to put on the Y tree, you can see here that is going to come from M2. So this SNP right here actually comes from M2. So that's going to be an E1B1A. So that's very important. So let's go back, and let's go back over here. So where is this at? Where is this E1B1A? So most likely, there was ones that were mixing with the Phoenicians and moved to different areas, right? That said, give or take, right? Take 2,000 off that, it'd be like 2,000, 3,000 BC, right? That can be early Eber, that can be early Jotunites, that can be any one of the relatives of those individuals, right? But we can't say there's no E1B1A up there, because look at this data sheet. Let's take a look at this data sheet and see what's going on here, right? Let me copy this little piece as we're going to go to the data sheet here. And what this is, this is ancient genomes from present day France unveil 7,000 years of its demographic history, right? So very important to get a look at this. Let me actually go down and go to this, download the material, and let's take a look if it does have an E1B1A there in this land of France of ancient times, right? 7,000 years. You can see the years. Okay, so let's take a look and see if it has an E1B1A, because that's what we're gonna do. We'll take a look at some of these things. All right, I'm gonna scroll down a little bit. All right, let me move this thing over. All right, so obviously we're gonna have some of the right E1B1B there with some U8. That U8 turns to a K, later turns to a K. So we're gonna find E lineages with K. Here, right here, you can see E1B1A with a U5. So there it is, E1B1A. That's in the north. That's before any of the Bantu expansion. That's before any of that, because this is Neolithic, middle Neolithic time frame. So that means before you even get any Bantus, you're going to have this E lineage that's going to be outside of Africa. That's super important. No fossil older than this one, I guarantee you. There's no fossil in Africa of an E1B1A older than this one. There's none. So that's very important. But let's keep on understanding. So obviously E1B1A had to move with E1B1B, right? You would expect that E1B1A probably had to move with E1B1B, right? E1B1A, its root to its spreading, right, to M2 and its other branches. It's gonna be this one, which is V38. Look what it says right here on this paper, just to kind of make it clear, right? Here's a paper from 2018. Prehistoric migrations through the Mediterranean basin shaped obviously this area. I'm just going to show it on here. Where is it talking about now? We're talking about here. I don't know if I'm going to say that right. Corsica. I don't know if I probably said that weird. But you can see right here, obviously, remember that E1B1A in France? Here's an island of France, right? France, right? We can see if we read some of the papers, we can get a little insight on what's going on there. Let me close this and get back to where we was at over here. All right, so Y chromosome diversity, just talking about the Y chromosome diversity, and look what it says here, right? Remember, we've seen that in the 7,000 year ago finds and whatnot of those E1 lineages. You can see right here, a few E1B1A, a few E1B1A V38 chromosomes are also observed in the same regions as V13. So what time frame are we talking about with these lineages? We're talking Neolithic, right? We're talking long time ago. So they're going to be outside of the areas of Africa, based upon actual observable science. But we haven't even touched the surface yet. Let's keep on understanding this. So just to point out where this one was, you can see right there, right? We're gonna also see it on a full tree. Let's look at a full tree of different ancient samples of D and E groups. Right. I want to thank the Hebrew of Israel who shared this piece of information. So we can zoom in and we can see the first. We can see the same E. There's that E1B1A, E1B1A outside of Africa. That's earlier. I want to see any Bantu find earlier than that. There's none. But here's the roots of the E lineages. We can see that there's going to be early DE lineages that are in the Levant that's split. There's some that's over here, right? That's going to be in these areas, right? Different lineages that basically diversify. You can see many different lineages around here and everything. Get a good idea of it, right? Seeing all these things, right? And then obviously we got some of the early E lineages over here, right? E-M96, right? You can see that. That's like 5,000. Or that's about 800 BC, right? 800 BC. I'll say that 800 BC. So take 2,000 years off year before present. YBP, years before present. So you can see what's going on there. There's a D up here, right there. The yellow is the D. So anywhere you see yellow on here, is D. So this is D, and anywhere you see red is E. So this is actually a real. If you want to see a real map of fossils of D and E lineages, this note will be in the description of the fossils of D and E. This is the real fossils, real reports of D and E is what you're seeing here. All right. So let's keep on keeping on. So we already went over some of the things of the. Remember we talked about the D&E, what they said. Obviously, the ones that were found, they were actually going to be outside of Africa, right? This model implies that both CF P143 and DE YAP evolved nearby but outside of Africa. How do we know that E1B1B most likely was outside of Africa? Because the oldest E1B1B, I talked about it before when I was talking about K, and I was talking about, I mean, not K, C or T. Let me actually open up a note here. When I was talking about T, we end up talking about a very important individual, right? We start comparing the E, the oldest E, with the oldest groups that make the R groups, Isham, right? There's an important find, right, of the oldest E1B1Bs that are outside of Africa. They're older than the Iberusians, or how you said it, Iberasians, pretty much. They're older than those ones. They're much older than the ones in Africa. They're older than the ones that are in Africa, because E is a Mediterranean lineage. It's actually a Mediterranean lineage. So it's a very important thing to know. So it's something that I'm going to show real fast. So just going down right here, this is where we talked about Isham and everything, but we do have some important information on the ancient Natufians. So you can see this is a little bit of it. I might as well read it from here because this has the piece as well. But let me just zoom up and click it where it says that, where it talks about pretty much the Natufians that they found at Mount Carmel, right? The early Natufians to middle Paleolithic, early to middle Paleolithic. So you can see we had talked about this, where it talks about pretty much some of the Natufians there. I'm just going to read off of this little paper that goes more deeper into, because they know that even that Natufian that they found was Semitic. They found out that it was Semitic. I'll show another paper that also says that too. You can see right here, we did find rare, earlier diverged lineages, obviously coming to the year 17 KYA, so 17 KYA, right? 17 said 1,000 years ago. The haplogroup common in Natufians, E1B1B, is also frequent in our database, which most lineages obviously are around 8 to 9,000 years ago. But watch what they say. Though we also found a rare, deeply divergent, I probably said that weird, divergent, probably said that weird, Y chromosome, which obviously shows us that it's about 39 years before present. And I talked about that before when we talked about the Isham, right? We talked about it when we were talking about the fossils that were found in Mount Carmel. You can find it easy if you put down Natufian Mount Carmel. It'll show you this fossil that said 40,000 years ago. So here's the paper right here. Let me make sure this is it. Yep, this is it. Just talk about the new humans, what they found, and everything, and it talks about the Natufians on here. But let's move forward because the focus is not on E1B1B. We know that E1B1B is Shemitic, but let's keep on keeping on real fast. And also, we already went over it before when we talked about the Natufian. When you compare his teeth and everything and talk about whatnot, you'll see that he was indeed Semitic. Right here, 73. That's the oldest E1B1B, as you can see. Oldest E1B1B. You can see right here, the Middle Eastern haplogroups, D and E split 42,000 years ago. See what's going on there? But now this is obviously a very interesting paper. This paper right here. He actually writes some more stuff. Here's a paper that he brings out is re-examining the Outer Africa theory and origins of Europoids, Caucasoids, in light of DNA genealogy and whatnot. So he goes to some information, and what he talks about is not only is people not really starting in Africa, because I already went over this, and we already know that people didn't start in Africa, but he also says that genetically they don't even tie together. Let me show you what I mean. Genetically, they don't tie together. He takes a R lineage, right? If a lineage is made everybody, he should be able to basically find the ability for the SNPs to make that lineage. Let me just show you what I mean. What he says here. She just talks about basically some tests with taking basically clades of A groups and whatnot. He's gonna go down where he breaks it down right here. So we already talked about this tree and everything. So remember, A groups are over here, so they split from BT and they go over here. They don't split from BT and go down here. They don't split and then here's an A and then there's another lineage. They split and they make their own. So A is over there and then R is over here. And watch what it says here. Haplogroup R1A, right? Just talks about the SNP. Haplogroup R1A. In other words, all of the SNPs have been identified. So they know it's been identified. They got the sub-SNPs and all that whatnot, which should be found according to the phylogeny of R1A. But SNPs of the all examined subclades of haplogroup A were completely absent. So it's saying that basically, A going from A to R is impossible. Is what it's saying. It's saying that it's not even connected in its SNPs. The same pattern was observed with all other bearers of non-African haplogroups, because it's already been said CT does not A does not make CT, right? Nor does CT make A. The bearers of haplogroup A were exclusively positive for such and such SNPs, right? Characteristics of that haplogroup. There are, however, four distinct SNPs which present in both Africans and Europeans of haplogroup R1A, right? So seeing what's going on there when it's looking at all these pieces right here, he just breaks it down, talks about basically like how they got the TCAG, the DNA strands and whatnot. Let's go down and understand something what he's saying here. I'm gonna show one more piece on this little thing. One more piece. So what he said, let me see, is up here somewhere. Let me just point it out. Actually, it's right on this, right? I'm just gonna read one more piece. So he just talks about all those little pieces and everything. You can see right here. Let me see where it is. Actually, it's not right here. It is going to be a little bit up. Let's see where it is real fast. Or I'll just skip this one because I wanted to point out one more thing he was talking about in connection to other groups, and I might have not visually seen it. Might have slipped my eyes real fast. Let me actually put down a search thing. Might be able to find it like this. It has to, because it has to do with CT, and this thing doesn't talk much about CT, so shouldn't be too hard to find. I'm thinking. Nah. In fact, I think they call it the African ones on this, but it just pretty much we already talked about it. It just talks about how A and B, the way that A and B works. I'll just read it off of this thing from where we already have the highlights. So we already talked about it. Remember, we already talked about A and B, how A and B links and everything. I'll just quickly read just the first part, right? When it's talk about the tree and everything. In other words, we see a departure of a first African branch, A0, which remember A0 is A0T, which is A1B, which are the same, from the main tree. None of the non-African groups, CT among them, that's why CT is called Eurasian CT, the Eurasian out of Africa CT, right? So none of the one from CT, right, descend from the departed haplogroup A0 or A1B. So A0T does not actually make everyone that way. So it's very important. There's a lot of information on that. We know that without a doubt. That's something that's just solid. Now let's keep on keeping on because I got some other stuff I want to talk about on a different note. But let's play this little video. Let play.
The Indian Ocean and parts of Central Asia. The Japanese Jomon belong to haplogroup D. Haplogroup D is also observed with high frequency in people living near the Altai and Himalayas. Haplogroup E is mainly observed with high frequency in Africa. It is not uncommonly observed in the Middle East and Europe. E is also known as M96. The earliest formation date was 73,000 years ago, and the most probable formation date was 65,200 years ago. The most recent common ancestor, TMRCA, was 52,300 years ago. The subclades are E1 and E2. E1 is the branch of the most widespread E, M96. They are also called EP147. It is thought to have formed 49,000 ago. The overall distribution of E1AM132, average 15.6% E1A. It is observed in 34% of Paleobiology people of Guinea-Bissau and 20% of the Papal Manjaco-Mancana people.
All right, so on this part, if you notice,
Trying to
almost
estimate
every one of his little videos. Let me just show something real fast. Because every time I try to I try to talk to him, and he said he was going to talk to me. We never talked, and he swears by that he's using fossils. But like for example, for this one, he'll use some. Let me see. Let's go to one that's will be fairly fast. Let's go to I don't know I real fast. So on I, we can note that he would use some fossils or some of the finds that would be used. Like right here, coordinate where we know that that's ancient finds. He does not do anything like that with E. He does that. He does that with F, and this is common. This happens all the time. Is that when it comes to like E group, it's kind of a guessing game. Except sometimes with E1B1B, they'll lay down the fossils, but a lot of times with E1B1A, that's the one they don't want to make not African. Even though we can point out that geneticists already said before there was an E1B1A and E1B1B, they were one with E1B1. And E1B1 was not in Africa. The fossils for E1B1 are found in the Natufian era. So that's very important. The fossils for E1B1P2 are found in the time of the Natufian. That's important. So that's just going to give us some key factors. But let me go back to that video here and just make something clear. So today is just a light, pickup of some things, just to kind of point stuff out. That this is what people do sometimes is that they'll use modern. All these are modern people, right? The ones of São Tomé, Príncipe, the Igbo, the ones in Ghana, all these, even the Zulu, the Bantu, all those are modern people. Even the fossils are modern. How do we know? Because we got multiple papers that will tell you that they're not that old, that they're actually not that old, right? And obviously, you gotta understand what I'm saying with these dates and stuff, right? We know that there's T and C. We got almost every lineage was found in the Paleolithic and Mesolithic. So you can see right here, Mesolithic 9,000. So remember, 5,000 years before present. E1B1A. That's not that old. Even though it's the oldest than any E that's found in Africa, it is older than all the other E1B1As that's found in Africa. But we do have like J, right? Let's just take a look at this. Remember, I'll talk about this, that almost every haplogroup goes into old dates when you start looking at some of the finds that they find, right? You can see in this time, 9,000 years or 7,000, you can see G's over here, J's in the areas of the Hittites, obviously E1B1B moving around these areas. C's, some of the I's went down into Africa, well, into this area. Well, I don't think I went down to Africa, no. But I is over here. I will be at the corner of the areas of Spain. E1B1B will be over here. C will be over here. So you got a lot of lineages that exist in this time. So this is Mesolithic. So remember, it's Paleolithic, Mesolithic, then Neolithic. That's when we get an E1B1A that popped up in the area of France. E1B1A popped up in the area of France. So very important stuff with that. Kind of makes things look a little different, I think. Kind of make you look at things a little different, I think. All right, let me let that load real fast. Let it load in. All right. So let me go to something else. So okay, let me point something out here, just to make something clear. So let me just go to where we went over the information of the Bantu expansion. I'll just quickly point to it. All right. I think I just passed it real fast. There it is, right here. So I'm gonna show you that E1B1A is not that old in the areas of Africa. So the Bantu expansion is kind of like the movement of the earliest E groups that moved into Africa and everything. But this is what we find when we look at E1B1A. It's gonna click it, and we can see which MTA was there early and which Y-DNA was there early. And obviously, this is not the earliest finds of Africa. These are not the earliest lineages in Africa, because we know before these were basically A and B groups. So you can see some A and B still there, some A groups and whatnot. So you see, this is where the E starts to go down there and everything. But notice there's no E1B1A in this time. There's no E1B1A in this time. But where does E1B1A start to go into the Bantu expansion? Right here. And what time frame is that? That's the Iron Age. That's the Iron Age. And it's important to understand that in the Iron Age is where we find E1B1A migrating to Africa and ruling over it. They rule over the areas of Africa later. That's very important. So that's a very important thing to understand. Also, remember, we already talked about things like A, things like that, because we haven't even touched anything yet. I'm gonna start showing them something with ancient roots and stuff like that. But that's important to understand, that you can see right here. Watch what it says. It even says it right on the study. This is why a lot of people that look at the Bantu expansion stuff, they think that that's like Neolithic, Iron Age, Bronze Age stuff. So right here, modeling obviously Neolithic male lineages, expansions in Europe and Africa. You can see what it says right here, right? It just says, obviously, again, a little information of that. You talk about the E1B1A. The later and more gradual E1B, later and more gradual because late, it came later, and it gradually grew. It was the fastest growing one. So it later came, and it was more faster growing. So again, the later and more gradual E1B1A expansion in Africa is as expected from the spread of cattle herders from the north. Where did E1B1A come from? From cattle herders from the north between 2 2.5 to 8,000 years before present. So it's saying that E1B1A actually came from the north, followed by the Bantu expansion to followed by, not preceded, not that the Bantu expansion was before the E1B1A that was found in France or found in the BMAC culture, right? Followed by in the BMAC culture. I'll talk about that tomorrow when we talk about where did Abraham come from. And I'm going to show you how E1B1A perfectly fits the Israelite lineage. It perfectly fits it. It's a shocking thing, but it perfectly fits it. That's because you got to look at total information, not just a little bit of information, but a lot of information sometimes. To know that E1B1A, though it did, yes, it did go recently into Africa and quickly, gradually, E1B1A expanded into Africa. But we know that this group from the cattle herders that came from the north came 2.5 to 8,000 years ago, followed by the Bantu expansion. Followed, that means it came after, by the Bantu expansion to the southern tip of the continent, but beginning approximately 2.5 basically years before present, right? And ending within the last few hundred years, right? Because obviously, a few hundred years because of the colonizations of Africa, slowing down a lot of the growth of the ancient peoples in the lands of Africa and whatnot. So colonization stopped a lot of that, changed things around. But what does Bantu have? How do we know that? And study the Bantu culture carefully. They have iron. That's important. That lets you know that they're already in the Iron Age, right? So it lets you know the package of Bantu languages, cattle, and iron working. The population size just talks about some things what it grew and whatnot. So that's important to know when did E1B1A actually come down into the areas of Africa, right? Take that in account with also the understanding of A and B and what some things like that. Let's talk about a little bit more on it. In 2011, just talk about this person reported a study on this talk about the languages and everything, and found an African origin of the present language. Just jumping down a little bit. However, more detailed analysts on the phonemic diversity reflected an Asian expansion. So this is again in connection to that same thing. When they looked at it more careful at the culture, they found out that it had an Asian expansion rather than an African one. All the languages, so that's important. The languages that were in Africa apparently were first from Asia, and they expanded into Africa, except for the Cochin language, which we already talked about that. The Cochin are mainly E1, are mainly A and B lineages, mainly A and B. And we talked about that when we talked about E1B1A replaced the native people of that area. But we're still diving, as you can see. So the verse from the expansion from Western Asia around Iran. So we had talked about that, about Iran, what was in Iran, what was around Iran. That's where actually the E1B1A was stationed, around Iran. The Asian expansion, and we're going to talk about that when we talk about the Afro-Iranians and the Afro-Iraqians and the Sidis and the BMAC culture. The Asian expansion was also supported by obviously genetic evidence. So genetic evidence actually supports the Asian expansion. Y-chromosome haplogroup phylogeny tree has an African root, but only haplogroup A and B were African. Obviously, those are going to be the native Africans. So we talked about that before. A and B is the native Africans, right? Those two haplogroups have never leaving Africa, or they did. We did find some out of Africa, but they are mainly in Africa, right? All other haplogroups, all within C, F, and D, E, derived from one ancient type, right? That with a marker of, remember that CTM168, out of Africa around 50 to 70,000 years ago. They expanded from Western Asia around 3 to 4,000 years ago, and gave birth to all haplogroups from C to T. So again, some little understanding on some of these things, and just to point out where this came from right here. This is where it came from right here. So modeling the contracting, I probably said that weird. Neolithic male lineages expansion in Europe and Asia. So we were just talking about that, right? Very important stuff. So it's letting you know what's really going on in the lands of Africa. There was a population placement, and many other people came down there. There's a lot more, but let's keep on keeping on. So the reason why I wanted to also point this out, because I want to show a quick video, but I'm gonna work my way up to that video real fast. All right, so let's point out some quick information. This information is important because let me go to a video here, because a lot of times you see people do stuff like this, right? They'll take all your classic dream humans. I call them dream humans because they try to make them all different species, but they're all humans. They're all just human branches, except for one of them on this thing is not a human, and I'm gonna point that out real fast. This one right here is not a human, but there's one that even predates that little find that he uses right there. The reason why I'm pointing this out is because I'm gonna start at the start of this thing right here. So a lot of times when they have the out of Africa idea, let me actually go to the start. So right here, so this will be actually, you see where it says this number right here, that's supposed to be like almost 2,000, that's like 2 million years ago. That's supposed to be starting at 2 million years ago. He says that humans started around this area, right? Now I already talked about this. I had already talked about this. You can see what species are there. So you can see which species. You can see the yellow and whatnot. I had already talked about this when I talked about the fact that we know that there were humans outside of Africa. I'll put a description, video in the description. Maybe I'll show it right now. I'll just show it real fast. I'll show it real fast on two of the earliest humans that he uses. I'm going to show the two of the earliest humans that he uses and show where they actually go. Let's go. I'm going to show where I talked about it. Right, I talked about them before right here. I'm going to go down and kind of click that. Actually, it wasn't this one. Let me see. It was actually a different one. Let me see. I think it was actually this one. No, it's this one.
Like this channel.
Yeah, this one was something I made real quick. But let me go to this because this is what I want to go to. I went to that for this highlight here. All right, so this actually was in updated basically 2020, and it's about the first migrations said out of Africa, right? And some of the earliest humans, right, said about 2 million years ago. You can see right here. However, this is going to be from the Australian Museum, because what he'll use, let me actually go to that. He's going to use a human, a being here. Let me go back a little bit. Right here. So it doesn't really. So right here, you're going to have one group here and another group here, and I'm going to point something out real fast. So this group right here, this name, is going to be this group right there in the yellow that he says he'll say that it never left Africa. And you can see that the yellow dot never leaves Africa on his design. See that year right there? And then he'll just have it just go extinct. But I'm going to show you something real fast. So this yellow dot right there, that's that, I don't know how you say that, erguster. Let me just go over here. Erguster right here. Watch what it says here about that. Obviously, a lot of people say that it was in Africa and whatnot. Obviously, their descendants, Asian Homo Erectus, then spread obviously into areas. Obviously, they were outside of Africa, but before modern people were here, people were outside of Africa. There's no sense in even putting A and B and D and E and all that stuff in Africa and say that's where they always been, because even ancient humans, which would be like pre-flood, they would be before showing us that they were outside of Africa. But you can see right here, however, you can see right here, an alternate theory proposed that Hominins migrated out of Africa before Homo, obviously, ergaster, probably said that weird, evolved. So it's letting you know that the one before this one was actually outside of Africa before this evolved, because I'm going to show you a find that's 7 million years old. I'm going to show it when we get a chance. We're going to work our way to it. Possibly about 2 million years ago, right? Prior to the earliest dates of Homo erectus in Asia. So it's letting you know that they were outside of Africa a long time ago. Evidence of humans outside of Africa, even by their own scale. By their own scale is actually showing a different picture. So it's letting you know what's some of the oldest evidence. Evidence from a genetic study indicates an expansion out of Africa about 1.9 million years ago, and gene flow occurred between Asia and Africa populations about 1.5 million years ago. So it's saying that they long time ago, these people were obviously in connections, because they found a lot of things in other places, in areas of Georgia, northern China, right? Very important. Even before the CT, before the Eurasian CT comes, which I believe is Noah. I believe that is Noah. See, the Eurasian or the CT, the Eurasian Adam. I believe that's Noah. I believe that is Noah, and that's going to be very important. But let's keep keeping on. So you can see, obviously, that lineage will be outside of Africa way before that time. And this other lineage that he shows that's over here, that one's obviously outside of Africa. But this one that he uses here was already outside of Africa by the time. But let's take a little dive into some other information. Obviously, creationists know this stuff. They already know the out of Africa idea is on the ropes, right? It's a little bit from some creationist ideas. And obviously, yes, they're creationists, but they're professionals, right? Dr. Peter Lane, right? Obviously, a PhD degree, right? In the area of neuroscience. So yes, he believes in God. Yeah, he became a Christian, but he's also got some background on some things. He says some interesting things on some things. Let's take a look real fast. So obviously, a lot of people should know that by the biblical narrative, the out of Africa idea is bogus. They should already know that, without a doubt. But let me show something that he talks about real fast. So getting right to the bottom line, right? Just talk about a few things, right? Remember that Homo erectus and everything? It says, even from an evolutionary viewpoint, it does not seem credible that for nearly 2 million years, gene exchange between small Homo erectus populations, right? Dianely scattered across several continents, helped keep them all united as a single species, while the different populations evolved separately into basically your humans that you see today, modern human form, all getting there around the same time. What he's basically saying is the same thing I've been saying. You can destroy the idea of evolution by using their own method, because their own method shows that they're wrong. Let's keep going and show how their method is wrong. So here's from Harvard University. It's going to be from a graduate school, art and science and whatnot. All right. So this is going to be from 2018. The oldest human fossil found outside of Africa throws popular theory into doubt. This is only a piece of what we're going to go into. Just obviously just talk about some things, whatnot, and work our way down. I'm just going to point out a highlight. What is it talking about? It's talking about a find right here, a recent discovery of a partial intact Homo sapiens, right? Partially intact Homo sapiens jawbone in Israel, however, has been dated to this time frame. Now, the reason why that's important, because when you start seeing groups from A and B and CT, because we know CT actually is the root, and CT actually isn't that old. His a root of CT. CT is only about 70,000 years ago. And that's using, understand what I'm saying, that's using their method, their out of Africa scale. So 80, you can see formerly 90. And remember, what's important is a lot of times people use outdate calculations, right? It was formerly 90 to 80,000 years ago, but it's 70,000 years ago. In fact, a lot of these years are going down. A lot of these high years, at the more fossils they're finding, those years are actually going down. Some go up, some go down, but a lot of them are actually going lower, because you find lineages more closer together, uh, mating, right? They had, like, for example, we can find A groups that have mtDNA of European females that almost a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of haplogroups of the A groups A lot of them have Indo-European females, the ones that are found outside of Africa, and there's a lot of them, like in the areas of York, Britain, and other places that we had talked about. But this is very important that CT actually, what's important about it too is that when it splits and make DE, the oldest DE for this one you can see is in Yemen. So that's very, very important. That's what we've seen. D split in the Middle East. You can see that's gonna be a old lineage. But let's keep on keeping on getting by. So obviously talking about a individual that was found of a modern human that blows a lot of the dating of modern humans being only in Africa out of the water, right? And this is just a small piece of something that we already talked about too. His original article, and we'll see what others say about this. So the earliest modern humans outside Africa. So you can see right here, it just talks about the earliest modern humans outside of Africa. Obviously, those dates are going to be outside Africa at high numbers. So very important when looking at those things. All right, so let's go a little bit over. Let's see what creationists say about this find. Right, here's something from creationists. Right, out of Africa theory. Right, contradicted by Israeli fossil. It's another PhD. Right, a person obviously has a profession right here. I don't know if that was going to show me. No, but this is him, Jeffrey P. Tompkin, PhD. Right, this is from February 28, 2022. So this is from this year. Right, the standing evolutionary theory is that humans evolved from chimps, ancestor around 3 to 6 million years ago. Right, but I'm gonna show you something that's 7 million that migrated out of Africa. They say about this time frame, right? However, right, they talk about what happened when they found some of the fossils. The fossils often contradict this story. Often, a lot. They contradict the story a lot, right? Now, a new human fossil discovery in Israel, right? Allegedly 1.5 million years old, contradicts the tired and faulty evolutionary story yet again. So that's very important. So obviously, we know that the idea of the Big Bang and people rising out of Africa, out of nowhere, is false, because if you start putting that to the actual scientific means, you is pound to pound, it cannot stand. The out of Africa interpretation of human history has been contradicted by the discovery of other human remains in places even more distant from Africa. Most notably, the alleged 1.8 to 1.9 million year old remains of Homo erectus, right? And remember, we already found Homo erectus's said father lineage that created him. It talks about that he was outside of Africa before that, when it talks about some of these things, and that's from the Australian Museum, right? So they already know about this stuff. But let's go back to over here. All right. So obviously, is in danger when you're taking all these information to account, right? While evolutionists like to claim that Homo erectus was a primitive human, right? Because a lot of times they want to say, well, it had to be a modern human, right? Like A and B or CT or those lineages, right? And we know that those aren't even African. But you can see right here when it's talking about what's going on there. Let's go to another one. Let's jump to another one. So it's just obviously, given the fact that the out of Africa scenario does not work, even by evolutionary standards, a biblical perspective provides a much more, obviously, better idea. Let's just put it like that. Let's keep on going. Let's see what genetic studies have shown. Here's a genetic study, a polygenetic view of the out of Africa, or the out of Asia, Eurasia, and out of Africa hypothesis in the light of recent molecular and, I don't know, what's that, just pretty much the finds, right? Getting the finds and everything, putting all those things together to get the full picture of what's going on here. Watch what it says here concerning some of the finds, right? And this is not a creationist site. This is just looking at information. We talked about this thing already, but this is just a highlight from some things. So obviously, the examination, right? They looked at some of the finds. They basically, if you've seen, that was I forgot what you call it. That was a big study where they studied the human genome. There's a big human genome study where they study the human genome to see what was going on. And here's a little understanding for what they have found, right? The examination lent no support to the commonly assumed out of Africa scenario, but favored instead a Eurasian divergence between Neanderthals and basically your Homo sapiens sapiens, right? So very important. So it lent no support for out of Africa, right? Because we talked about this, we talked about these things before. Now, with that said, I'm going to show you a very interesting video. But first, let me show you a quick highlight. When they found A00, this also caused a problem. A00
of a very rare and ancient Y chromosome that didn't fit into the known picture of Y chromosome diversity. Many, many years of research on the Y chromosome told us it was very much a chromosome that
of genetics
didn't fit into
working, right?
To the known picture of Y chromosome diversity. Many, many years of research on the Y chromosome told us it was very much like mitochondrial DNA. All the Y chromosome variation today trace back to a very recent single ancestor that lived in Africa about 100 to 140,000 years ago. This was the picture that we had at the time, and it made a lot of sense because the most divergent lineages on the Y tree were found in hunter-gatherer populations like the Khoisan and the Pygmies, which was very similar to autosomal patterns. Well, this particular lineage was discovered in an African-American man from South Carolina who happened to submit this DNA to the National Geographic Genographic Project, which sees thousands and thousands of samples, was very unusual, did not fit on the tree. Well, so just to update where we stand today, now we have to add another admixture process in Africa, along with the two outside of Africa.
All right, so let's keep on keeping on. I'm gonna show you. Now that we got that understood. Now let's see a video by someone that broke down something fairly interesting. He basically made a video debunking the out of Africa theory in 15 minutes. He actually did it in 10 minutes. But I'm gonna show. So these are just other pages. I just want to show you that other pages are starting to see this stuff. And they're sharing it. So this is a page that's sharing it. This is a page that's sharing it. So this page right here by this person, he's sharing it. Obviously, Reddit sharing it. A lot of people are sharing this information. Very important information. Another person from Reddit shared it. Right, it's a very important piece of information. Something that's definitely important to know about. Right, another place shared it. Channel for creationists, and obviously get into deep information of stuff. Right, they shared it and everything. Right, this one shared it, debunking the out of Africa idea. Right, the replacement or out of Africa model, right? Because out of Africa says that people came from out of Africa and replaced all the people in the world and whatnot. Model proposed a single and relatively recent transition from Arctic Hominins to basically correct, right? The modern humans, what we see today, right? They'll say start in Africa, right? In Africa, followed by a later migration to the rest of the world, migrating or rapidly evolving into, they say, modern humans. Well, not just basically the normal, the ones that stand up, the standing humans. But it's important to know they say that modern humans were the ones that basically were replacing some of the ancient humans. That's why they say they were wiped out. But we know otherwise. We know it's a flood. So we're going to actually see something that's going to be talked about by this person that is going to be know a lot about this stuff. He's going to know a decent amount about this stuff. So a lot of people trying to share this. But here, this is the person. I only found his like little Instagram, but he's an anthropologist, right? So he's going to be looking at this stuff and breaking some of this stuff down. Let's see what he says here on some things and whatnot. Let's actually check out one of his little videos that he has here. I'm just gonna take it to here. All right. Let me go to a timestamp because I put a timestamp here somewhere, right here. All right.
In America,
it's gonna. I'm gonna let you see it. 10 minutes long, and then we'll go quickly talk about it, or break it down in the midst of it.
the curriculum is divided into 4 parts. including archeology, consisting of the analysis of unearthed artifacts and other physical remains, linguistics, which deals with all aspects of language and its origins, culture, meaning traditions, customs, and behavior, and of course, genetics, pertaining to human biological diversity, DNA, racial origins, and evolutionary theory. And while various hypotheses pertaining to humanity's origins are discussed at the university level, the out of Africa theory is heavily favored, despite compounding evidence to the contrary, because it seems to support a social engineering political agenda rather than a scientific one. Another theory which is touched upon is called the Aquatic Ape, which I covered in a prior video, that postulates that mankind did not necessarily come about from monkeys and great apes, but may have shared a common ancestor that evolved around water, whether on the surface of the earth by lakes, rivers, and oceans, or in subterranean caverns, which also contain similar bodies of water, with some upright hominins later taking to the trees to evolve into branch-climbing monkeys or fur-covered apes. And while this may sound counterintuitive, mainly because of decades of media conditioning, the concept does share some parallels among some of the world's foremost geneticists and evolutionary biologists, who may or may not also have received a coupon at Red Lobster. Dr. Owen Lovejoy is a distinguished evolutionary anthropologist at Kent State University, Ohio, best known for his work on Australopithecine, locomotion, and the origins of bipedalism. Lovejoy has published more than 100 articles related to his research and is most well known for his work on reconstructing Lucy, an alleged human ancestor with an opposable big toe on its feet, meaning they resembled thumbs for grasping branches and climbing trees. While Lovejoy claimed that Lucy, which was dated to 3.4 million years ago, was at least partially bipedal, he proposes that Artie, another alleged human ancestor dated to between 4 and 5 million years ago, spent more of its time allegedly walking than Lucy, despite being over 1 million years older. This article titled "Man Did Not Evolve from Apes" says, a U.S. biological anthropologist says he's determined humans did not evolve from apes, but rather apes evolved from humans. Kent State University professor C. Owen Lovejoy, who specializes in the study of human origins, said his findings came from a study of Ardipithecus ramidus, a hominid species that lived 4.4 million years ago in what is now Ethiopia. Quote, "People often think we evolved from apes, but no, apes in many ways evolved from us," Lovejoy said. It has been a popular idea to think humans are modified chimpanzees. From studying Ardipithecus ramidus, or Artie, a partial female skeleton, we learned that we cannot understand or model human evolution from chimps or gorillas. Of course, Lovejoy is still very much in the mainstream, and while he proposes that humans and apes shared a common ancestor that was neither human or monkey, at least he makes it clear that the popular idea that humans are modified chimps is false. My own analysis is that neither Lucy or Artie, which were a little over 3 feet tall, walked upright at all, and were both primarily tree dwellers, not only because their feet resembled hands like other apes, but because their furry ape-like bodies did not sweat, the way all bipedal hominins do, as sweating is a trait that is associated with running and hunting, which neither of these specimens did. The artistic reconstructions in museums are deceptive, showing erect, upright models with human-like feet, which is a fraud, and while they're not completely fake specimen like the Piltdown Man, which was a baboon's jaw glued onto a human skull and touted as the missing link by the British Museum for almost 50 years, or the Nebraska Man, which was another imaginary creation based on what turned out to be a pig's tooth. The missing link is still very much missing, and the linear, hominin progression proposed by the Out of Africa model continues to fall apart as advances are made in the field of genetics. The obsolete and politically motivated Out of Africa model proposes a single and relatively recent transition from archaic hominins to anatomically modern humans in Africa, which is not supported by the fossil record, followed by a later migration to the rest of the world, replacing other still existing hominin populations, which again is not what happened. DNA sequencing of modern and archaic genomes has now conclusively and irrefutably demonstrated that humanity is a hybrid species and that racial differentiation exists because we're comprised of various degrees of different hominin species which interbred within the past 50,000 years. In this article published in Nature, we read that ancient humans lived in a Lord of the Rings world and indulged in interspecies sex, including Neanderthals, Denisovans, and a mystery species, which anthropologists have labeled a ghost species, meaning it's considered super archaic, not yet identified in the fossil record, but likely Homo erectus or Homo habilis, over 1 million years removed from modern hominins, and comprises up to 19% of sub-Saharan African DNA.
All right, so that's not what he's talking about real fast. That's what we were talking about. I'm gonna put the video in the description of the Out of Africa video when we debunked Out of Africa by using actual real genetic papers, real sources, right? What is he talking about with that ghost population? When we talked about that, we actually know what that ghost population is because we have the admixtures that just came the last 2 years. So let me go to that real fast. So we already talked about, remember that ghost population and whatnot. I might as well type it down right here. Right here. You just go down right here. So here's that study. We just talk about a study indicates the present day West African, right? West Africans trace obviously a decent amount of their genetics. That's why he was talking about that 19%, 2 to 19% of their genetic ancestry from a said extinct human species who they call a ghost population. Well, guess what? That's what that ghost population was. We actually found out what that ghost population was because we seen the tests. Ghost population, obviously humans had Denisovan, Neanderthal, and that ghost population, which was Homo ancestor. So you can see what's going on there. So Homo ancestor. So very important. It's very interesting stuff. So that's a lineage, obviously, moving about, going to different areas. So that's why it says ancient protein and analysis provides evidence for a close relationship between Homo ancestor, right, and us, Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, and Denisovans. So all those are just of humans. That's all it is. When you find those ancient humans, they're just humans. We can understand it by understanding the flood. Right. But let's keep on keeping on with what he's saying here.
Not found in the DNA of Asians or Caucasians. This interbreeding event happened about 43,000 years ago in Africa. In other words, it's not possible for sub-Saharan Africans that contain this archaic DNA that is absent in Cro-Magnon to have left Africa 35,000 years ago and magically mutated into what became modern-day Europeans or Caucasians or Asians. So this leaves the question, where did Cro-Magnon or modern Europeans come from? When we look up the word indigenous in the dictionary, it says, quote, originating or occurring naturally in a particular place.
Real fast, since he just said that indigenous, real fast, right? We was talking exactly about that exact thing when we was talking about what's the difference between someone that migrates somewhere and someone that's indigenous, right? Someone that's actually native to that land, right? That's very important, right? There's a lot of different historical reports about people migrating into Africa, right? Here's one real fast. I'm gonna shotgun some of these reports. Here's a report from, I'll just show you this paper. There's a report from Let it load up real fast so I can just show you what it is. Oh, I'll just read from it while it's loading. But here's what it says about the Arabs, because a lot of people, when they think of the Arabs, you should automatically know they're Shemites. The Arabs belong to the great family of nations, which, on account of their supposed descent from Shem, the son of Noah, are commonly known as Semites, right? That's why you think of Semitic, right? Semitic languages, right? Then the Natufians, who are Arabians, then they speak a Semitic language. Let's look and see what it says about the Natufians and their language. Watch what it says from another linguistics, right? Someone who knows about the words of the peoples and whatnot. And remember, though Natufian were Semitic, they weren't just any type of Semitic. They wasn't just they wasn't Cushite Semitic, right? They're modern Semitic. That's what makes it more important. They're modern Semitic. Let me actually point that out right here with the Natufian. Here's a paper. I keep on reading it. It's a lot. Keep on reading it because we gotta stress this, right? It's from obviously a very expensive book, $144, obviously by a linguistic. Let me just read what it says right here at the bottom. This paper makes an additional inference, since there is archaeological and physical anthropological. Probably said that weird. I would say these words weird, but that's actually what the person that I'm showing you, that's actually his profession. His profession would be in this little field. Anthropological. I don't keep saying that weird. You know, I got a speech impediment. And I keep get it's all blending in my eyes. Anthropological. It's pretty much the study. What it pretty much is, like I just showed right here, right? This is what this person does. The person that I'm showing you today, obviously, I'm not just showing you someone who doesn't know this stuff, but it's the study of human history, pretty much. It's pretty much from actual studies of human history, right? From prehistory and things like that, and obviously archaeology from actual digs that are dug up and everything. This is what is found out about the Natufian. Before I read that thing, it says, so obviously from the archaeological and the physical anthropological reason to believe that the Natufians were related to what? Modern Semitic speaking people of the Levant. So what do they speak in the Levant today? Modern Semitic is Hebrew and Arabian. I suggest that some part, if not all, of the Afro-Asiatic family originated north, right? North, Levant, Arabia, north of Africa proper. So the language that's in Africa, Afro-Iranian or Afro-Asiatic, which a lot of the people, the Bantus, a lot of those people speak an Afro-Asiatic language. Even Niger Congo is actually linked to an Afro-Asiatic language. You can see right here, obviously it's going to be originating north of African proper. Since Natufian culture dates to 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, it is suggested that the age of the Afro-Asiatic language family might also be about that old. So you see what's going on there with these things when it's talking about what's going on with the linking of this language. So it's talking about a modern Shemitic, modern Semitic. Now back to the historical record, because you can see a lot of geneticists cannot deny it. E1B1B is Arabian. Well, watch what this historical document says here. It's from here, from this book that I need to open, which I don't know how. Oh, I got to scroll. All right, so it's from this book. Right, it's a photocopy right here. You can see a little bit of it from Henry West Sage or W. Sage from a university, right? And then you see 1891. So obviously getting some information about some of these things. So real quick, let me read you what it says from this thing, right? Let me go up. So right here, you can see right here, again, if you ever hear out of your ear anyone who's an Arab, you have to know what is an Arab, right? Someone from Arabia. The Arabs belong to the great family of nations, which on account of their supposed descent from Shem, the son of Noah, are commonly known as Semites. This term includes the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Hebrews, the Phoenicians, the Emery, I keep saying this word weird. Armenians. I keep saying it weird. The look what else is included in the Semites. The Abyssinians, the Sabaeans, and the Arabs. And although based on a classification that is not basically understood, you can get a good understanding. It just talks about basically breaking down the Phoenicians and the Sabaeans are in a way also connected with Hamites. We'll talk about that. Those nations were kind of like in a way replaced by some of the Shemites. Some of the Shemites merged in with the Hamites, right? The Sabaeans and Phoenicians, some of the Shemites are in the areas of the Phoenicians and stuff like that. Here's another quote. Let me go down a little bit. Right here. Actually, here's a this is another piece of the screenshot. I'm gonna go down and point out something. So remember, the main thing I want to point out before I proceed: what are Shemites? Also the Abyssinians or the Abyssinia, right? Abyssinians. Watch what it says about this book right here in this little book. Watch what it says here. So there's a book you get from the Play Store. It's free, I think. So this little book right here, just talk about some of the trades of India and whatnot. It says about 18 BC, according to Arab historians, Jotunite, which are Shemites, right? Son, brothers, families, children of Eber, tribes entered and conquered South Arabia. So, but were largely absorbed by the Kushite stock, right? Because the women. As a result of which the second or Sabaean empire of Abe was formed, in which the Jotunites became the sacred and land-owning castle. While the political and basically just talk about what's going on when they was basically having things going on with the Kushites. So they had a lot of things going on with the Kushites. I'm just going to jump down right here. It says, later the Sabaean Kushites, conquered by Banu Yarub, a Joktanite stock from Yemen, migrated. Where did he migrate? Into Africa and establishing themselves in Abyssinia. So in Abyssinia, remember we just read Abyssinia had Shemites. So we know that Abyssinia had Shemites as Africa, continuing the ancient conflict for 6 centuries or more. So very important. Sorry for that, the one in the background. So again, there's more. There's much more history on it. Go into it. We know that the earliest Shemites, as Flavius Josephus actually wrote, you can see right here, talk about Shem. Where did he start at? Beginning at the Euphrates, being in areas of the Indian Ocean, right? We'll talk about that tomorrow. And obviously, where did many of the Shemites found themselves? In Damascus, right? In the areas of the Levant and things like that. So that's just very important. Getting a good understanding. That's why you get the early E1B1Bs that settle in the Levant that are also going to go into Africa, Abyssinia, and those are going to be Shemites. It's actually going to be Shemites. Historical records actually bring the full picture of these things, right? That's just, and this is just some small things to go over. We can talk about some of the migrations and stuff like that happen. It's a lot more things that happen. But let's keep on keeping on. Let me close this. So just to get a good understanding of some of the biblical concepts before we proceed, let's keep on keeping on. So let's keep on keeping on. So indigenous. So that's what important of indigenous. Continuing the last piece that I want to show you with that saying of the indigenous. So remember, Natufians are in the area of the Levant. As you can see, this will be the areas between. And this is the Natufi. This is going to be, this matching Abraham's movement. But this is going to be basically the information right over here, right here. So here's going to be the Natufian homeland. So E1B1, that's where we find the oldest E1B1. But let's let me point to what I was saying real fast. Watch what it says right here concerning some of the movements of, because I already talked about where L3 starts, Tel Hula, and Atel. Remember, Atel is actually a city. So it's found at a city in the lands of Syria. But we can get an understanding of, some understandings of some things, whatnot. So very important. You can see when we talk about this right here, I'm just going to read this little part. Just talks about the L3 and the E moved into Africa. I'm gonna skip that part and just read. These new Eurasian lineages were then suggested to have largely replaced the old autochthonous male and female African lineages. That's important. E lineages, as it says right here, the Eurasian center origin dispersal of haplogroup E, obviously get a good understanding. They are actually the ones that went down into Africa and replaced the ones in Africa. So who they replace? An inhabitant of a place, indigenous rather than descendant from migrants or colonists. So E is not indigenous to that area. E actually migrated to that area, replacing the indigenous inhabitants. Traces of earlier inhabitants, however, can be observed today in these regions via the presence of the Y haplogroups A1A, A1B, A2, A3, and B and 60. Those are going to be the real indigenous African branches. So with that, that's just something to get a little understanding on some of these things before proceeding forth. And we already talked about, remember that CT. So sometimes you'll see when they talk about, this is just a little piece. There is a lot of different information on that. How you say, what's the word I'm looking for? Eurasian Adam. There's a lot of information on a Eurasian Adam, but let's proceed. Let's proceed on. Let's proceed. Let's let this video play and continue on. I just want to make a little highlight for what is the difference between someone that moves into an area, dominates an area, and someone that's indigenous, right?
Native. That said, the islands right off of the coast of Africa are known as the Canary Islands, and the native indigenous inhabitants were known as Guanches. They left behind tall blonde and red-headed mummies and were studied extensively by the National Socialists of the 30s and 40s. If we look up the Guanches in the Encyclopedia Britannica, it says that they were the direct descendants of Cro-Magnon, which makes sense, as the museum on the Canary Islands has the largest collection of Cro-Magnon skulls anywhere in the world. It also says that they had blue or gray eyes and blonde hair, which also makes sense, since the mummies that they left behind had blonde and red hair. It also links them to populations in Europe and North Africa, and not only do the Guanches share genetic affinities with the Basque and the Berbers, which are the natives of North Africa, all of these populations are among the highest percentage of Rh-negative blood factor in the world. That said, the Basque mythology, which according to the Center for Basque Studies at the University of Nevada says, quote, "Where did the Basque come from? No one knows exactly where the Basque came from. Some say they have lived in that area since Cro-Magnon man first roamed Europe. Estimates of how long they have lived there vary from 10,000 to 75,000 years. Some say they were descended from the original Iberians. More fanciful theories exist as well. One is that the Basques are the descendants of the survivors of Atlantis." The concept of Atlantis becomes less fanciful and more probable when one looks at Pleistocene or Ice Age maps of the Atlantic Ocean, when Atlantis was said to have existed and sea levels were much lower, or genetic maps of the Pleistocene distribution of DNA on both sides of the Atlantic, such as haplogroup X. But we never hear about these perspectives because the people that control the media and academia in the 21st century are the same people that were promoting the Piltdown Man hoax during the 20th century. I have a lot more to say on the subject, but I'm starting to get hungry.
So, real quick to understand, let me make sure I state this. If you don't know, he just made it clear that the outer Africa idea is political. It's based on media. It's based on he say, she say. It's based on theories. It's based on probability. It's not actually based on fossils, and fossils are actually debunking it. There's a lot of people who don't know genetics. Remember, who I just showed you, they study ancient genetics. They study linguistics. Obviously study ancient humans. There's some people who go to school, get a little college understanding, right? I've been to college too, right? I know it is. But there are some people who want to try to debunk the Bible in their ignorance, showing that they don't know what they know. So if you ever see someone try to debunk that video, I know who that person would be. Let me just show you something from one of the brethrens. They already checked that
of
person.
genetics stop working.
This is
Right?
that person.
You accept that paternity tests work. You accept
If you see this face,
to say that
if you
lions
see
and
this
tigers
face,
are related,
avoid them.
right? Lions and tigers are 95% similar on their coding base pairs. Humans and chimps, 3.8 times more than that. So why does it break down for you there? And they never have an answer. I've never heard a convincing answer for that.
So it went from I've never heard an answer to I've never heard a convincing answer. What she meant to say was I've never heard an answer that I've understood or liked. That's more like it. Because we've all had conversations with this person, and the genetics completely goes over her head.
Yeah, I'll be the first one to admit that I'm not a geneticist.
Again, I'm not a geneticist. I can't say for certain genetics is not my forefront.
Because I'm not a geneticist.
As I've said for like the 20th time, I'm not very well versed in genetics. I can't give you great answers because I don't know them.
So going back in time, in the human lineage, we converge on a single human ancestor with nearly identical mitochondria.
All right, just some meat for your protection. So keep your eyes open. You know, this is some real information from real sources. You know, don't let no one try to take it from you. So let's look a little more deeper into this because there's still. I'm almost finished. We're almost finished. Now I'm going to show you that they found a. Remember, this person is using. Look at the oldest time frame he has, and remember that all that E1B1A jazz that was all modern people. And look at this. This is only 2 million years old. Right? But they got way older stuff than that. Way older stuff than that. That destroys the out of Africa idea. For example, let me show you something.
1.2 and not in Africa. This is a very controversial. This episode being titled 7.2 million year old pre-human fossil suggests mankind arose in Europe and not in Africa. This is a very controversial subject, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts. And so definitely at the end of this video, comment your thoughts in the thread below. A new analysis of two 7.2 million year old fossils belonging to a hominin species nicknamed El Greco from Mediterranean Europe suggests that mankind emerged in Europe and not in Africa.
All right, so what is this person talking about, right? Obviously, we got to understand the biblical narrative first and understand this thing. Basically, what he's saying is if you believe in evolution, if your soul ties is in evolution, you're tied to nothing. You're literally tied to nothing because it's about to crumble. It's literally about to crumble because the amount of fossils that you're finding. Remember, if you never seen me break this down, where did the idea of the out of Africa idea come from? Not from fossils. It was a racist term that came up during the time of eugenics. It was a racist idea that came up during the time of eugenics. And in fact, they didn't even know the haplogroup of many people of dark skin. A lot of people of dark skin, they just complied them together like they were one people and said that all these darker pigmentation people must have came out of Africa, and all of a sudden their pigmentation changed and their races changed, and that's how white people started to develop because the black people that were in Africa. I'm not kidding you. You can look up the out of Africa story. I'm simplifying it to the maximum. They say that all these black people that apparently were monkeys at first, all of a sudden their pigmentation skin came out of Africa and they all of a sudden start having babies, and those babies start looking paler and paler and paler. And that's how you get these super advanced, final evolved white people or light pigmentation people, which I love a lot of them. There's a lot of my brothers. But it's important to understand that that's the story of out of Africa, and it's super ridiculous because it's not based on actual genetics. It was based upon eugenics and the eyesight. That's what eugenics was based upon, eyesight, right? If someone was less in some type of field, they would say that this person must be less of a human. So that's literally that's where it came from. We could talk about it. I read it before, but we talk about it now. Let's talk about what this person is talking about. So let's see what he's talking about here. The whole teeth fossil. Now here's something from a lot of different places brought it out. I'll show you where it came from. The person who found this, if America found this or certain nations found this, they would not get this out. But there was other places overseas found this, and they brought it out. So right here, whole teeth fossilized tooth said to be 7.2 million years old may prove mankind came from Europe, not Africa. That's that. So obviously, this is going to be destroying the idea of the out of Africa idea, right? Alone from just this find, from the idea that out of Africa is a scientific method that is basically formed by fossils is false. It's not actually formed there. In fact, these are in two different places. You see, this is found here. This one's found here, and they're both said about 7 million years old. So one in Belgium or Bulgaria and Greece. So you can see right here on these areas on the map. So that's Spain, and you can see France will be there. That would be Greece, right? Letting you know that that's what they found. Let's look at another piece, because you see what's going on here is letting you know that this jawbone was actually unearthed a long time ago, but they recently obviously got the DNA from it and found out what. Until now, the oldest known Hananaman was thought to be this one right here, which lived 6 to 7 million years ago in Chad, Africa. But this surpasses it. This surpasses that scale. This completely surpasses all the scales of other ideas. Here's the report where it first came out. I'll let you see when it first came out.
The Chinese Academy of Sciences and Peking University have joined an archaeological find near Chongzuo City in Guangxi Zhuang Autonomous Region. The discovery is the fossilized lower jawbone of a modern man. The find provides evidence to support the theory that modern humans did not only evolve in Africa, but in multiple regions around the world.
The lower jaw fossil was discovered by Dr. Jin Changzhu and his team from the China Academy of Sciences in May of 2008. It was buried in a deep-seated stratum of earth in a karst cave in Guangxi. Fellow archaeologist and longtime researcher at Chongzuo site, Dr. Pan Wenshi explains the fossil's significance.
The groove and teeth arrangement bears obvious characteristics with that of modern man. It indicates that modern men appeared in this area over 100,000 years ago.
The Institute of Earth Environment of the Chinese Academy of Sciences and Minnesota State University jointly tested the isotopic element detection on the fossil. The results date the fossil back to 110,000 years ago.
The bone shows that the evolution from ancient man to modern man occurred in East Asia, at least in the area of modern Chongzuo city. The process took place in various regions around the world.
Certainly the mandible is modern human. It is Homo sapiens. It might be evidence for multi-regional, but it's hard to say at the moment. It's a single piece. I'd be curious about the teeth, the human teeth that were also found with it. But overall, it's very positive find, and it does, yes, represent Homo sapiens. So it's very good.
Guangxi's Chongzuo city had been a hot area for archaeologists to excavate fossils on ancient vertebrates and ancient mammals. Those fossils have shed light on the research of human origins. Su Yaotian, CCTV.
The Smithsonian Museum of Natural History.
So did you know that's why sometimes I go over this information, not because I know that anyone who's a believer or young earther, I am too. I believe that the earth was no more than 6,000 years. And I have a lot of different information that I know that I can put to light and know that it's true, that these dates are exaggerated and the way that they're dating it is ridiculous. They're using layers. They're assuming that the world always been this way. Even the Younger Dryas disproves that the world was not always this way. Sea levels weren't always this way. Obviously the biblical narrative is true. But let me point something out real fast that I had in this little video. I put this in this video because I know that when I'm talking about these things, right, we can easily try to convert it to small years, but I'm showing you that the out of Africa concept does not stand, is what I'm showing you. I'm showing you that the out of Africa concept does not stand. Even here's a read. I think this is a read from it. Here's where the Out of Africa concept came from. I'm going to read to you where it came from. Before 1980s, there was almost no discussion on the African origin of modern man. So before the 1980s, there was no discussion of it. The subject was rather obviously marginal. There were two reasons why those discussions could not have been considered serious. Obviously, because they don't have all the fossils. But first, it was agreed upon that a rather remote ancestor of modern man was Homo erectus. We was talking about that earlier, which had appeared more than said 1 million years ago, probably in Africa. But we know right here. However, it was known that it then spread all over Eurasia, which we also looked at some of the information. They know that it was actually mainly in Eurasia. Therefore, it was recognized that Homo sapiens could have appeared in any region of Eurasia. So it's actually when they had brought, this is a geneticist that's speaking here. This is a geneticist that's saying this. And he said that when in 1980s, when they brought the out of Africa idea, they knew that the same possibility of people starting in Africa, the same possibilities of people starting not in Africa was still applied. That's very important. Therefore, it was recognized that Homo sapiens could have appeared in any region of Eurasia, right? Right. The other reason is because how people are connected to Neanderthals. So his two reasons is because of the evidence of ancient humans being outside of Africa before we're here, and the evidence of modern humans having mixture of the Neanderthals, which were already outside Africa. So that means that we had to be outside of Africa for us to have that add mixture. So that's just something important. But let me show you something real fast on this thing. Here's that 7.2 million year old pre-human in the Balkans. So here it is, right? We was talking about this when we was talking about some of the things. We have other stuff as well, but I'll just leave it at like this, right? 7.2 million year old pre-human remains found in the Balkans, right? Right, you just go on, get a little idea on these things, whatnot. So it's a real find. Talk about modern Greece. It was found in Greece, right? Why I'm saying Balkans, Bulgaria. So Bulgaria and Greece, just to make it clear. So you can see it's a real find, right? I'm not just talking about theories. Hold on. Just had to move something real fast. All right, so this is a real find. Obviously, whenever I go live, I'm going to have a source. We always talk sources. Unless we know we're going to get on some, something spiritual and things like that. We always can do that. There's no problem with that. But just to kind of like set the table that, yes, we got sources. I'll put this video in the description afterwards where we already went over the out of Africa idea, but here we're going over it again. So just to make it kind of clear. All right. So with that, let me just make sure I hit everything. So that's pretty much everything I want to show. Here's the last thing to show. Something about E1B1A. Let me just show something because I don't know why not a lot of people know this about E1B1A. But the oldest fossils of E1B1A, let me just point something out on here. So here's E. In fact, I'll just do it like this. So obviously DE is old, but if we go to E1B1A, I'll just go right here. Y tree. Obviously, I don't really use Y tree because it's modern, but if someone tries to use modern Africans to say that E1B1A always been in Africa, then I'm going to use modern people of outside of Africa to show that E1B1A was outside of Africa. So in E-M2, the oldest one, right? When you look at some of the old finds of M2 and whatnot, you can see a lot of them are in Saudi Arabia, right? That's very important. That a lot of finds of this M2 is in Saudi Arabia. In fact, if you take a look at M2's full picture, a full map of M2, you'll find out where are they really centered. Where's the most of M2's branch? Guess where the most of M2's branch is? It's between the areas of Saudi Arabia and Africa, right? And remember we talked about that, how a lot of the Shemites were going to Abyssinia and they were going to the areas of Africa. We also could talk about how in the book, the new complete writings of Flavius Josephus, book 1, chapter 15, how the Libyans went into this area, or the Midianites had went into Libya and renamed the area, which all this used to be called Libya. The whole, you can look up an ancient map of Africa. It was not called Africa. It used to be called Libya up here, and underneath it was Ethiopia. And so Abyssinia will go here, and then it'll be in connection to Ethiopia down here. And also the Midianites had took the area of Libya. So that's something to understand, that a lot of Shemites were going from this area going downwards into these areas. Why? Because I'll talk about it tomorrow. I'll talk about why they weren't going a lot of times upwards. Because up here with the Scythians, the European nations were extremely powerful. The European nations were extremely, extremely powerful. The Scythians, the Kassites, the Gutians, these are the Mitanni. These are extremely powerful nations that ruled the north. Japheth was very large and powerful in the beginning. But a lot of those, the other nations, the Jotanites and the Midianites and the Ishmaelites, like it says in the Bible, right? They sold Joseph in Egypt, right? They went into Africa. They went into the areas of Africa, and that's where, remember, Abraham. Let's draw it out. So I'm going to show you tomorrow that some people from these areas came down and settled in Sumer. I'll show you tomorrow, and in that area, that's where E1B1A pops up from here, from this way, coming down, and they'll settle here. I'm going to show you that tomorrow. And then in the third dynasty of because a lot of times you got to know what dynasty Abraham came from after the third dynasty of and you got to know what happened, right? The Gutians came down and sacked the area, and Elam also came there as well and settled in that area. And Elam was mixing early on with some of these lineage. And I'll show you how Elam had ties to nations all the way to the Indus Valley civilization over here. And a lot of these civilizations knew each other. But I'll show you how they settled in here and they came downwards and they settled over here and whatnot, spread. But you can see this is a large point where they're settling at. So not a lot of people think about that. The Sidis, they don't think about the Sidis. They don't think about the Afro-Iranians. They don't think about the Afro-Iraqians. They don't think about a lot of different individuals. So Saudi Arabia, different things like that where they settle. But let me show you something. I don't know if you ever seen this. A tree of E1B1A. Now, this thing, I had opened up the whole branch. I should have put it in like a different tab or something, because now I see it's probably closed, maybe. I'm thinking. Yeah, closed. But let me show you. E1B1A is a very large branch right underneath this. V38, M2. So M2, and remember, his twin brother is E1B1C, or this one used to be under E1B1B. There's a show that I'll go into some of the more detailed stuff tomorrow, because I've been waiting to build to talk about, what was the real story behind Abraham, where he start, the exact pinpoint. I'm gonna use a Egyptologist to get the pinpoints for when he came and some things like that, because it's kind of interesting for the pinpoints of those things. But let me point out this E1B1C, which I'm just gonna click and go over. Just to show what I'm talking about real fast. Let me just go over here. All right. Let it load up. Or I'll just scroll, because it's kind of hard to find like that. Let me just point this out on this one right here. Just to show that. So it used to be on E1B1B. So that was a long time ago when people were saying E1B1B is Esau, E1B1B is Esau. I don't believe E1B1B is Esau. I believe it's the Arabs and the Ishmaelites, the Midianites, the Jotanites, and other branches. But I do believe E1B1C or E1B1A2, not A1. All the other ones are A1. E1B1A. Other ones are A1, but only one is E2, which is E1B1C, right here. So it used to be on E1B1B. So you see from P2, it used to be on E1B1B. So E1B, you can see E1B1B, and over here is E1B1C. It used to be on E1B1B's branch, but it switched over when they found the mutation of V38. So before they didn't have V38's mutation, they found V38, right? That's that when they talk about Ramses and all that stuff that changed the game in a way. And I'll talk about that. What's the deal with Ramses and stuff? Because he has a big part of the story too. So right here, V38, that branch splits is going to be different lines that come from V38, right? This is going to, in fact, E1B1A 8 and E1B1A 7 are the ones that I found to be more close to the Israelite lineage. E1B1A 8 and E1B1A 7, because there's so many branches. Let me just show an example. There's so many branches on this tree, right? Just to get an example, you can see how many. If I was to try to open this, it has right here. It lets you know how many times it will open, whatnot. It has a lot of different branches in all these different branches. So obviously there's a lot. I had opened it up before. It scrolled for like a minute. You can scroll down for a minute, but the page just restart. I'm not gonna sit here and just open it up. But it's a very large branch. If you ever wanted to open up, you can see it yourself. That's a very massive branch. But tomorrow I'm gonna go over pretty much the historicity of how the Akkadians had took over the Levant, and then how the Akkadians fell when the Gutians came down, and then some of the movements of the Kassites that came there, and then where did the third dynasty of Ur, when did we get the Israelites coming there? We can get a perfect understanding with the haplogroups and the movements of these people. And I'm gonna show you, even in the Iron Age, we can find skulls of the Doikosophatic Israelites, and talk about what do we find in them and everything. We'll talk about some of these things, how these different societies are connected, societies going over at that time. We'll talk about that tomorrow in connection with the Elamites and some of those things. But today I just wanted to clarify some things. So I got some meat for tomorrow. We're gonna go over some things and talk about some things, whatnot. But I just want to make some clarity for that, because I think it's just ridiculous when I see people do stuff like that. So I don't really got nothing else. But the tree is big. A lot of the lineages are from Saudi Arabia. He doesn't talk about that, but it's true. You can look at the Siddis, right? Siddis, Siddis, the Siddis, right? You can look at their haplogroup. You can look at who they are. Where are they? They're from Pakistan, right? Who are they? What's inside them? The people who have the same lineages as the Bantu, right? And of South Africa, those same lineages are in these ones. And remember, I already showed that E1B1A actually migrated from the north and went to the south before the Bantu movements. But these are Siddhis that are in the Indian and the Pakistani populations, probably coming from the BMAC culture groups. So that's going to be very important. But very important. Another thing that's important, when you talk about these things, you see, obviously, they're going to have E1B1A in there. So a lot of people don't think about that group or know about that group, the Siddhis, right? Or the Afro-Iranians. Afro-Iranians. They have it in them as well, right? Well, I'll talk about that later. Afro-Iranians have it as well. This is basically what they look like right here. Or the Afro-Iraqians, right? I don't know why I put it like that. Afro-Iraqians, I don't know why I typed it like that. So that's another one, so you can see what they look like. Afro-Iraqians, you can see what they look like. There's a lot of different cultures of the Levantan people. I don't know why it just went back. We just show this one. So Afro-Iraqians, right? And they're not in Africa, right? They're not, obviously, Iraq and Iran. These are not in Iraq. These are not Africa, but these are going to be some lineages. So they'll say that they came from these areas. But again, looking at fossils, you'll see that they're not. Every time they find these lineages there, you know what they always want to call them? Slaves. They want to say that these came from slaves. But if you look carefully at the fossils and the history, not a lot of them were actually slaves. Yes, some were slaves, right? But not all of them were slaves, because they came from this group, the March Arabs. The March Arabs, right here. You can get a look of what they look like. The marsh Arabs right here. So they were from the marsh Arabs. You get a good idea of them. There they are. Right? Ancient culture that's in that area. Right? That's moving in the marshes and everything. You can see went over the genetics. They got E1B1A in them. Right? The marsh Arabs. Right? They pretty much are in the marshes and everything. Genetics. This one doesn't point it out, E1B1A. It points out the E1B1B, a large portion of E1B1B, but they do have E1B1A in them as well, most likely in the study. I'm not going to click it right now and go into it. Tomorrow, we're going to go into some of these informations and whatnot, the details. So the areas of the world is more larger than it looks, right? Africa is a huge continent, and it had a dominance of the E lineages. That doesn't mean that they were indigenous. That's what ancient studies is for, right? And sometimes, like he said, like one of the brethren has said earlier, right? Sometimes people go up with that robot voice and everything, right? And they'll try to use that robot voice and act like they have a lot of information using animation. I can do animation too. If you haven't seen, I have different animations that I've done. I can easily, without a doubt, take a week and make a whole animation of how the movements of E and other groups. But I would rather provide the actual hard evidence, the sources, right? And this is in my field. I'm not skilled, the best in reading or the best in all that stuff. I'm a more of an artistic person, right? I grew up doing art, but I choose to give the deeper and factual and true, accurate information than going with what the world wants and taking advertisement revenue, taking money from people and whatnot. But this video, I just want to end it like this.
Ramses the
I don't know how long I went. Let me see. What's the time? All right. I'll just end it like this on the summary. This video, anytime you see modern, look at the percentages there. These are not dates. These are not dates of people. This is taking Wikipedia, going to Wikipedia and taking pretty much a couple different information and putting it down on a visual that's going to get a lot of attention because people love visuals, but factual information is missing from this. One, creationist scientists don't believe it, and a lot of regular scientists don't believe it. A lot of them don't believe it. People who actually understand genetics. Don't let someone who doesn't understand genetics try to tell you what it is without sources. Make sure they show their sources, what they're concluding. If they're not showing any sources, because they probably don't know what they're talking about. They probably don't know what they're talking about. They probably have a lot of thoughts and conclusions, but not actual real sources. So these are modern finds. I can take my time and show you E2 in this area as well. I'm gonna do that tomorrow. I'll show you some of where the E's are and whatnot. And E1A that is in this area as well, right? He doesn't point those out at all because he doesn't most likely never really looked into the fossils, never really looked into the ancient fossils of paper. So these are modern, and none of these have years on them. All these are modern people. I just want to show you that this is just a sad attempt by Nomad to make some money on thinking that he knows all these haplogroups, but he doesn't. So now I'm gonna just flip through everything that I showed so far. I'm gonna quickly summarize all these things that I talked about. So we were just debunking the out of Africa idea again, and I wanted to let you know that CT, as we went over CT, is also called, right, a new Y-chromosome Adam, or your Eurasian Adam, or out of Africa Adam, and that's where DE comes from CT. DE comes from CT, which even the design, you can see that they'll try to divide D and E and say that, oh, this D must have been out of Africa. This D must have been out of Africa because there's no fossil of D in Africa. This D must have been out of Africa, but the E must be African. But yet these two are related by one node. They're related by one node. You can't make one African, one not African. They're related by one node. And that node is found outside of Africa. We already went over that. So very important. That's why I was showing you that last time, that CT actually has evidence of a Eurasian Adam. I believe it's a sign of Noah, right? And right here, his one I went over when we were talking about pretty much some ideas that a lot of people who study this stuff, this is in 2020, they know that a lot of the out of Africa ideas are not holding up. You see right here, will Asia rewrite human history? So you can see what they're talking about when they talk about early humans migrating across Asia seems to be more accurate, right? So you can see what's going on there with some of these things. And then over here, we talked about basically how they took R1A and they know that R1A, right? R1A, it doesn't have the same SNPs as haplogroup A. That actually A SNPs is absent from R1A, meaning R1A didn't come from an A. If you know genetics, they always try to say A groups made everybody, but geneticists know that's not true. A groups don't actually make everyone. Some people try to say that just to try to wing it, but if you break it down, the actual mutation in the SNPs, they know that the SNPs don't support that theory. So R1A or any of the CT lineages don't come from A groups. Very important. And then we talked about what geneticists say about some of these finds, or geneticists, what creationists say. This was a obviously someone with a PhD, right? We just looked at what they said about some of the out of Africa ideas, and they found out that out of Africa seems like it may not actually be supported. That it may not actually be supported at all. And then we talked about obviously what some people from Harvard University was saying. So Harvard University about some of the finds. You can see right here, the oldest human fossil found outside of Africa throws popular theory in doubt. In doubt. So obviously that's what we're talking about, some of these things. And then we talked about how other creationists also know that the outer Africa theory contradicts itself. It has contradicted by Israeli fossils. So another PhD knows from 2022, that wasn't that long ago. He wrote this just this year. And he found out the same thing, that a lot of the fossils are actually showing something totally different than what people are trying to sell, that the out of Africa idea is actually going to be false. We also know that in a real genetic study, when they actually did the actual sequencing of those, basically those fossils that they found outside of Africa, they know that when you take all the information in a whole, it starts to show pretty much this. This is what it shows. The examination lent no support. It lent no support to the commonly assumed out of Africa scenario, but favored instead the Eurasian pretty much scenario, right? That people came from Eurasia, not from Africa. People came out of Asia, not from Africa. And we seen that when they found A00, it started to change the game, right? Started to change things a little bit. We talked about that before. We talked a little bit about A00. And I showed you all these little, obviously, people know that out of Africa have found different people, professionals that are looking at, and they're finding out the same thing that many others are finding out, that the out of Africa idea, when you take the actual detailed sources, they don't support the actual findings. So this person right here, remember, always examine, never just take someone's word, just examine it deeply, see if what's going on with it, and obviously use the biblical discernment to understand these things. But this person here, who is a professional, right? Robert, this person right here, obviously, I'm probably gonna say butcher his word again, anthropologist. I said that weird, but obviously the study of humans and everything, but he also studies ancient genetics. That's what makes it very important about this individual. So this is all his professions: linguistics, right? Obviously archeology, and what this is basically ancient genetics. So ancient genetic studies on these things. And then we had talked about how they found said 7 million years old, right? 7.2 million year old human in Europe, not Africa. They found fossils that are like close to 8 million in their out of quote, remember, quote unquote, out of Africa scale, quote unquote, out of Africa scale. According to their scale, this destroys it. It destroys their scale. Their scale can't live anymore because they are finding fossils outside of Africa older than inside of Africa. As I've been saying it, that they would find fossils outside of Africa before they find it in Africa, because of the biblical narrative is not a lie. We know that even Cain and Abel, when they split, Cain went to the east of Eden. East, not south of Eden. He went to the east of Eden, not the south. See, if we got obviously the studies, a lot of different places were publishing it. It was obviously a real find that they had found, right? And they found it in multiple places. Here's here, and the other one we found in areas of China and whatnot. And then this one was
The Chinese Academy
the actual
of Science.
This was the actual report when it came out. We even at the end, another person verified it. This person verified, said it was a sighting. It was obviously a real find, right? So this is some real thing. So be wise, oh you saints, as things are sometimes deeper than it may seem. Be ready for a change of a worldview. If you have to get a change of a worldview, we went over the facts on how DE is actually Eurasian, is outside of Africa. Though we have some closer to our time that would be in Africa, that doesn't mean that it began in Africa based on fossils, based on actual real fossils, right? For example, if you want to see real fossil ages, they get enormous, right? A lot of these fossils, but they're found, look where some of the earlier ones are found, outside of Africa, right? Belgium, Russia, Germany, Russia, right? Talk about some of these early ones. And then even some of look at this, CT. Where is CT actually found? Jordan, in the Gasulian culture, in the pre-pottery Neolithic B, CT is actually found in the Gasulian culture outside of Africa, obviously. Obviously the Natufian as well, right? Outside of Africa. E-M35, right? The Natufian. Obviously the mtDNA is interesting as well with those ones. I don't know why I don't have it on this. But you can see what's going on there. And look, you can see this will be, maybe make sure this year before present. Yep. You can see different lineages. Let me actually reset that and click that. All right. The years went up because I reset it to bring out all the papers. So you can see 400,000 years ago. That's that Neanderthal. We already talked about some of these, right? Humans outside of Africa before they were in Africa. But you can see these years. Look at this one in Russia. This R lineage in Russia. This I lineage with a U5 in Spain. Look at the age of that, right? Don't think that when I show you that what you got to know is that E1B1A is one of the youngest haplogroups there is today. You got to know that E1B1A is one of the youngest. In fact, that age, that one we found in France, when I showed that paper, it was about 5,000, 6,000 years ago. But remember, that's using the Outer Africa scale, which the Outer Africa scales hundreds of thousands of years. So remember that's a drop of water, but yet that E1B1A is super young. It's a baby compared to the Outer Africa scale. And even with the understanding, E1B1A at its oldest is found outside of Africa. And that's what the understanding, you got to understand the Bantu expansion, that the Bantu expansion actually would tell you that they came from somewhere else. They didn't come, that African lineage that had Bronze Age equipment, because the only E1B1A you can find is with Iron Age equipment, not Bronze Age, Iron Age equipment. You can look it up yourself. The Bantus had iron equipment. That's how we know they were late coming in, because they came in with iron and dominated Africa from pretty much the little what they call them hunter-gatherers that were down there. But you can see right here, obviously, Gassis, right? Look at the dates of these years, right? These dates, these are female lineages over here. You see what's going on there. But look at the years here. So just in case, like, oh well, that E1B1A was almost 6,000, 5,000 years ago, though it was in France. It is older than all the other Bantu ones, but you can see right here that these other years here get astronomical, right? 7,000 years in Ukraine, right? Other ones like that, very, very high years on some of these. So you get a little understanding. And every single thing on this is a paper. If I wanted to, I can copy this, and look up the paper from the year, from the location, and we can find the paper. I can take all this, copy it, and find the paper, because these are real papers. There's multiple times that show that on this little page, these are actual real finds, fossils, right? But understand that these dates are exaggerated. They're astronomical. They're exaggerated. I already went over before. All right, and let me close that one. So I'll put these notes in the description, notes to make sure I went over everything, summarize what we went over. So again, remember we went over all the information on the origins of DNA. So more, I didn't go over any of DNA as we do have other pieces of information about DNA's origins, but we do know that where DNA began was outside of the areas of Africa, pretty much. That's something that's very important to understand. That we did find fossils of DE 24,000 to about 15,000 years before present in Upper Paleolithic, in pretty much where you'll say Siberia. So we did find some DE up there. That was something that's very important. So it does split out of Africa, and that's not even the oldest one, but that's just something that's important. So we already went over that when we talked about DE, and then we had talked about some of the information of Africa. Remember, it's important to know that I went over this little book right here. I need to put the title of this book underneath it. I don't know why I didn't put it underneath it, but I'll put all this in the description, and it'll be named what I name it on this note, on these notes. So this is Africa. You can see we know that indeed in the areas of Africa, Abyssinia, Africa, we know that the Abyssinians, right? We know that they were Shemites, right? The Arabs were a family of nation that descend from Shem, right? The son of Noah, that we know were Shemites, and they were in the areas of Abyssinia, right? It doesn't mean that all Babylonians and all Assyrians and all Phoenicians and all these groups, it doesn't mean that all of them are Arabs or Shemites, but it does mean a large portion of them became Shemites. So that's something to know about. Very important, right? So going down a little bit, getting a little understanding of these things. So remember we talked about how the Jotunites had went into that area that I was just talking about, Abyssinia, right? It talks about the Jotunites had went from Arabia and went down into, as it says, and established themselves in Abyssinia and continued the conflict for basically 6 centuries or more. The Jotunites, right? The Shemite Jotunites. There's more information on some of these things. I'll put this in the description. And then we talked about the roots. You got to know about how it splits. If you want to know about how the genetics work, you got to know that this is BT and this is CT, and that A does not make CT. CT, everything right here, all these are their own lineages. So DNE, which come from this one node, see it splits like that. It makes E, and then it makes D. That's under CT, and also CF. So F and C right there. So C, F. So we know that C right here, C right here, and F right here from this one node. So again, C right here, and F. CF is one node. They're actually one node together, these two. And they split and they make all these. So they, F-M89 makes all these. But we know that A doesn't make it. A doesn't make all those. So this is the information when we talk about the fork. It talks about A1A, A0T. All those don't make CT lineages. That's very important. One over here. This one I'll put in the description. It's just some information on E1A. As the information on E1B1A is just making a drawing. It's kind of it requires to go over the actual fossil information, but I'll just put this in the description afterwards. Close this. All right, and then we talked about, remember, the Denisovans, what actually are modern people linked with, and I revealed that ghost population is the Homo ancestor, right? That's why we did that big old video of how humans were mixed. Ancient protein obviously was analyzed, and you can see that it was connected with Homo ancestor and us and Neanderthals and Denisovans. So, but they're all humans. When we actually looked at the dirt cave results, this is information from this is dirt cave. From the dirt cave, they had some results on unearthing Neanderthal population history using unclear and mDNA, maternal DNA from cave specimens, and they found out how they were connected from that mtDNA. They found out how people were connected. And see, what they found out is that right here, there's evidence of a flood. These lines all wiped out. None of these exist. All these are Neanderthals and Denisovans, all wiped out. but modern humans exist. But we're all humans are related. These ones don't even make these, but they're related, right? So it kind of be like a brother lineage in a way. So you can say Cain, and this could be what you would say as Seth. And then we obviously had talked about some other things. This one's L3. I'm not gonna put this in the description. This is just information on L3. Maybe I'll just add it as extra. I don't know, because I already went over some things on it. But things get deep when you think about the mtDNA. I talked about this before. I'm not gonna talk about it right now, but you can see right here that the Isham is a very important lineage because they believe that it might have also even made the L's. But that's another story. That's a whole other story. We'll go into another time. But they know when they think about what humans might be, they might have started in Asia and went out to other places of Asia like Oceania and Europe, and obviously went and became some other lineages like Neanderthal, Denisovans, some of these in African. So very important. That's another subject on the mtDNA. I'm getting to it right now. It's really deep though. So with that, we make sure on this one, what's this? Oh, this is just on T. When we talked about the roots of that Isham. So this just talks about Isham and everything that was found in the Upper Paleolithic, and it was comparing. We was comparing the E1B1B that matches that same one that on some of the Isham papers we're talking about. On the Isham paper, we'll talk about some of the E1B1B lineages that basically come to the same about year and is outside of Africa. So we talked about some of that. So I guess with that, that's all I got. The information sometimes is very deep and very important. As we went over before, that there are some lineages of peoples or ancient Hanaudimans or ancient humans that they would say started in Africa and remain in Africa, but a lot of those theories don't hold up due to actual research, right? So we actually know that most people started in a Eurasian population, and that's where we see most people develop, because all the early humans went out of Africa at least way before our time. So that's saying, like, for example, we know that by the time of Cain's time, we know that humans filled the earth, as the biblical narrative said before the flood. Humans filled the earth. Flood came, wiped out all those people. There's no Neanderthal, Denisovans, right? Those are names that they give them, Neanderthal and Denisovan. But none of them exist today. All their lines wiped out, and all modern people today exist from the CT lineages. So AB, CF, or DNE lineages exist today. With that, that's all I got for you today. If you got any questions, let me know. Otherwise, with that, family, be blessed, be beloved, and amen.